Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tales from a Retro Gamer. This is episode number 40. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Let's go back to the 1990s. What an amazing time to be a retro video game collector. By this point, the NES was no longer the system of choice. The Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and then a little later on in the decade, the PlayStation, the Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn, all that stuff was coming out. And if you went to FuncoLand and some other video game stores, I was going to FuncoLand all the time. There were a bunch of FuncoLands in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You could buy NES games for super cheap. I mean, we're talking as low as 29 cents. Stadium Events was listed in their catalog. I've got a catalog here I'm going to show you and just read some prices off of it. But some of the most expensive NES games now are super cheap back then. Stadium Events, like I said, you could get for 29 cents. And I do remember seeing this game. I sold my copy to a pawn shop for $5. Let me talk about some other expensive games before I tell you what I did with these games. Bonk's Adventure, $14.99. Now, these games I'm going to be talking about, these now sell for hundreds and thousands of dollars in some cases. Little Sampson, very famous rare game among, retro game enthusiasts, $6.99. The Flintstones, The Surprise at Dinosaur Peak, $9.99. Panic Restaurant, $3.99. Chiller, $4.99. Menace Beach and Sunday Funday, 29 cents and 49 cents respectively. Now, when you went into a FuncoLand, they would have a stack of these papers at the front of the store, and this one went through, let's see, August 31st, 1999. And it was really neat to look through and see what games were available. They would have listed, most every game for the console. And since this one's from 99, you open it up and you see an ad for the Dreamcast, and you see Sega Genesis games and all kinds of games, just, all the way up through 99. And you would look through these newspapers, and if you saw a title they did have on the shelf, that was the price right there. And it was really fun to look through these lists because you would see games on there you had never heard of. Like, I was a big Contra fan, and I saw on the list Contra Force. What is this? And so it was just a lot of fun. And a lot of times, I mean, the truly rare games that are still rare now, you wouldn't necessarily see those on the shelves. For the older games, it was kind of erratic what games they did have and what games they didn't. But I would go there periodically, pretty frequently actually. Once a week I'd usually go out and hit, a bunch of FuncoLands in the area. And eBay was kicking in the mid-90s. eBay began in 1995. And around 1996 or so, I started selling stuff on eBay. I was one of the earlier people I knew that was selling on eBay because my brother-in-law was doing it. And I pretty much he kind of showed me, what it was about and how to do it and everything. And I would buy games at FuncoLand, some to keep, ones I really wanted to play. And I wasn't just buying to fill in holes. I was only buying what I wanted to play and what I could resell. If I found a game for 29 cents, 49 cents, up to $2.99, I would buy it and I would take it to a pawn shop. There was a pawn shop I knew of that would sell or that would buy games from me, sort of wholesale from the public. They would buy games for $5 each. They would buy NES games, Genesis games, Super Nintendo games from the public for $5 each, and then they would turn around and sell them for $10 each. It pretty much didn't matter what title it was. So if it was one of the less desirable games at the time, like sports titles, games nobody heard about or cared about, I would buy them at FuncoLand and turn around and sell them to the pawn shop. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later. I want to talk a little bit more about just what it was like buying. I mean, it was just so exciting because there was a FuncoLand on the other side of town in Irving, which is, between Dallas and Fort Worth. And I went in there one time and they had over 30 boxed complete Super Nintendo role-playing games. Now, I bought them all. No, I didn't sell them for $5 each. Role-playing games even then commanded a little bit of a premium. They would be anywhere from $7.99 to $14.99. But FuncoLand and later GameStop, they did not. They had no discretion between cartridge only, complete, with manual. It didn't matter. If they had a price, it was the price. So if I found boxed role-playing games, if I found factory sealed games in some cases, I would sell those on eBay. and I would the cheaper stuff, like I said, I would sell to the pawn shop. Now I did this for years before retro gaming really took off around 2006, 2007. With the angry video game nerd getting popular, with YouTube, with the Wii Shop channel. Where retro gaming sort of started snowballing. 2006, 2007, 2008, games started getting more expensive. But before that, man, garage sales, flea markets, pawn shops, FuncoLand in particular. Holy cow, you could get some really great games, some really rare games for super cheap. And I want to show you, I just want to read off some random games that I'm going to go through here from the August 1999 FuncoLand paper. Just randomly, Mega Man 1, $17.99. Mega Man 2, $9.99. Let's see, Mickey's Adventures, $6.99. Milon's Secret Castle, 99 cents. Let's go through here. And it's kind of interesting what was expensive and what was cheap. It just kind of depended on supply and demand and sometimes seemingly random factors. Some of the prices make no sense. Some games that were kind of sought after would be cheaper than games that nobody cared about. It just kind of, I don't really know what system they used to determine these prices, but prices were all over the map, everywhere from 29 cents up to, like, for example, Adventures of Lolo 3 was $24.99, Pac-Mania $14.99, Jack Nicklaus Golf 79 cents. So that kind of made sense, cheap. Now some of the sort of hard to find titles were a little bit more expensive, like Snow Brothers was $27.99, but it was all over the map. And it's just funny to me to think that I once bought a Stadium Events for 29 cents and sold it for $5, considering now it was cartridge only, but now that goes for thousands of dollars. So anyway, over those years, I would buy games and sell them to this pawn. There were two particular pawn shops in my area that would buy them for $5 each, and I did that as often as I could. And at some point, they lowered it. They would buy them from me for $3 each. So at that point, I would only buy games up to around $1.49 or $2 each. I'd buy them up, and I tried not to do it too often. I tried to kind of, space it out where they didn't get sick of buying the same games over and over, because a lot of them were the same ones I would keep finding at FuncoLand, so they would get too many of the same title or whatever. So I tried to space it out, and I tried to mix it up with variety. And over the years, they ended up getting a big video game section, both pawn shops. And they had a lot of duplicates. They had a lot of sports games. The people that worked there weren't gamers particularly. They didn't know much about the video game market, but they were a buy and resell, and they were happy to buy these games for me, and I assumed they sold quite a few of them, or they wouldn't have kept buying them. But over the years, they did get, quite a few. And then when FuncoLand switched to GameStop, and then in the mid-2000s, when retro games got more sought after, the pawn shop and their super cheap games dried up at GameStop, which it was FuncoLand and then GameStop. This sort of, I was unable to do this any longer. There was not a point where I could buy games cheap enough to then resell them at these pawn shops. Sometimes I could do it with PlayStation games here and there, but over time, to make a long story short, these pawn shops, they each accumulated a whole bunch of NES, Genesis, and Super Nintendo games from me. And years later, many years later, I went back just to see what these pawn shops looked like and just to kind of see if they had changed. And they both had a lot of the same games I sold them back in the day. They were stuck with Maddens. They were stuck with Super Scope games for the Super Nintendo. A lot of sports titles. And I kind of felt bad about it because they were stuck with so many of these games, but I sold them so many over the years. I'm sure they made more than enough money to make up for it. But it was just funny to see those same dusty old titles. And by this point, later on, they were selling games for later console generations and doing quite well with them. But they were pretty much saddled with these old games. I think I even went in one time and offered them like $0.25 a piece for all of them, or 50 cents or something. And they said, nah, we'll just hang on to them. These are old school pawn shops with older people working there, and they would smoke, and their inventory rarely got switched out too much, and it was dusty. Just a great dusty old smelly pawn shop. And I did get some great stuff from there. At one of those two pawn shops, I did trade a VCR for a Vectrex. Story for another time. All right, guys, tell me in the comments your experiences going to FuncoLand and GameStop in the early days of GameStop, when you could buy Stadium Events for 29 cents, when you could buy all these what are now very rare and expensive games for cheap, or just in general, what are your FuncoLand memories? Now, the last episode of Retro Gamer, it's been a month of Tales from Retro Gamer. It's been a month, but things have been crazy, and I've done some other episodes, but as far as Tales from a Retro Gamer, this is the first one in a while, but I did get some comments on my last episode, which was, you know, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie review. Midwest Media Show commented, I had asked you guys, you know, did you like the movie? You know, what did you think of it? And Midwest Media Show said, I love the Sonic games, and I was a little nervous that they were going to go Super Mario Brothers movie on this. As you know, the Super Mario Brothers movie is terrible. As it turns out, it is a really cool movie. My 6-year-old really enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the sequel. Every once in a while, things go right, LOL. Jeremy Lamastis said, went and saw it yesterday with my nephew. That would have been a month ago. We had a blast. I think it will be my favorite superhero movie this year. And I'm a huge Morbius fan and still excited about that one, but I still think this is the best one this year. He considers it a superhero movie. And Sonic, I guess you could look at him as a superhero. I've got a similar background. I'd rented Genesis, but when Sonic came out as the pack-in, I bought it pretty quickly. I got all the Sonic games for the system. I even still have a plush that I got with pre-ordering Spinball from Sears. This movie really captured the feel of Sonic, and I was a bit concerned at first as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for those comments. I really appreciate it. And if you could like this video, that would be awesome. If you could subscribe to the channel, right below the video, just to your right, there's that subscribe button. Click that. Tell your friends about the show. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. I will talk to you guys next time. Peace out. Let's see. WDF chat. Okay, I'm gonna have to have a cutoff here.
Why are you just saying random stuff?